Signal indicators on the microphones, please remove them, please. Okay. No, I'm talking emblems. Thank you. I'm removing the emblems because I don't want to look or sound like Donald Trump. Thank you. By agreement between the parties, I do not propose reading the entire judgment. I read a summary of the judgment, although it's quite long. So I've permitted the accused to sit down whilst I read the summary of this judgment. This is an alleged parricide. The accused, Henri van Breda, is indicted before us for the murder of his brother, father and mother, and the attempted murder of his sister. He faces a further charge of defeating or obstructing the administration of justice. The state contends that the deadly assaults upon the victims were committed by the accused, who repeatedly hit them with an axe or a similar sharp object, and committed other unknown acts of violence. The last charge relates to the apparently false information given to the police and other related activities in order to mislead them as to the true identity of the perpetrator of these crimes. The incidents underpinning these charges occurred at 12 Gosker Street, the Zalze Estate, Stellenbosch. The accused, his parents Martin and Teresa van Breda, and his siblings Rudi and Marli van Breda, resided at the said premises. The accused was the middle child. I shall refer to the victims by their first name for the purposes of this judgment. It is convenient to do so. On the morning of 27 January 2015, the emergency services, the EMS, were summoned by the accused to the residence. A true copy of the emergency call made by the accused at 7:12 in the morning was handed up in evidence and played in court. Upon their arrival on the scene, the police found the accused at or near the front entrance of the property. He was only wearing a pair of sleeping shorts and socks. Superficial injuries on parts of his body were discernible. Two of the deceased, Martin and Rudi, were found inside the bedroom on the first floor. This was the bedroom used by the accused, and Rudi, Teresa and Marli were found nearby in the doorway. This was the bedroom used by the accused and Rudi. Teresa and Marli were found nearby in the doorway, or rather the passage area, outside the same room. Marli was still alive, but barely so. The deceased and Marli had severe head injuries, probably caused by the axe found on the stairway leading up to the first floor. Although Marli did not succumb to her injuries, the injuries sustained by her are similar to the injuries sustained by the deceased. These events lead to the case before us. The accused pleaded not guilty in respect of all the charges, and an extensive written plea explanation was placed before the court. In the said statement, it was inter alia alleged that the persons responsible for the attack upon the Breda family were unknown intruders, one of whom wore dark clothes, gloves and a balaclava type mask. The accuser and the attacker were involved in a physical altercation during which the accused sustained injuries. The accused disarmed the attacker, and in pursuit of the fleeing attacker, the accused fell down the stairs. The accused got up and followed the attacker to the outside via the kitchen or back door. The emergency services were not called as the accused did not have a number for them. Instead, he tried calling his girlfriend Bianca. Upon re-entering the house, the accused then lost consciousness on the stairs and is unable to state whether this was due to shock or the injuries sustained by him or to a combination of both. He was unsure for how long he was unconscious. In any event, when conscious again, he endeavored to find the emergency number and lit a cigarette to calm down. Because of his Australian accent and because he stutters as a child, he spoke slowly and calmly to the emergency operator. The legal issue: it's the state's contention that the accused is responsible for the attack on his family and that he subsequently tampered with the crime scene. The state's case is based on circumstantial evidence. There is no direct evidence implicating the accused. The state contends that no one else could reasonably possibly have committed the crimes and that the accused version, that is, of intruders committing the crime, is simply not true. Defense counsel argued that the circumstantial evidence presented by the state to prove its case against the accused does not warrant as the only reasonable inference that the accused was the person who attacked his family. It was argued that the circumstantial evidence by the state supports the accused and not the state's narrative. The Van Breda family, Mr. Cornelius Andries van Breda, the brother of the deceased Martin van Breda, described the Van Breda family as a close-knit, decent family with no enemies. The accused himself testified that the family had no real enemies and he was not aware of anybody who had a grudge against the family. The children Rudi, the accused, and Marli were born on 10 July 1992, 1 November 1994, and 12 October 1998 respectively. The family emigrated to Perth, Australia in the beginning of 2006. The accused matriculated at Scots College in 2012. Martin, Teresa and Marli van Breda relocated permanently back to South Africa in January 2014. Martin had launched a new school project in South Africa called EduGrow. They relocated primarily because of the demands of Martin's business and Teresa's desire to live closer to her family. Rudi and the accused remained in Australia. They studied at the University of Melbourne. Marli attended school in Somerset West, and upon the family's return to South Africa, the family moved from Gordons Bay to the Zalze Estate in about March 2014. The accused terminated his studies in Australia and joined the rest of his family at the Zalze Estate in August 2014. The members of the Van Breda family were described as well-educated, intelligent, and well-mannered. With regard to the security layout of the Zalze Estate, this is obviously of importance in this case. The general layout and the functionality of the system. The accused alleged that the Van Breda family had been attacked by an intruder during the early hours of the morning, as shortly before 04 hours 24, when he made his first call to his ex-girlfriend Bianca van der Westhuizen. The Zalze Winelands Estate near Stellenbosch, this Marcia Rousseau was employed at the Zalze Estate as security manager since February 2014, explained the layout of the estate with reference to the map which is before us as Exhibit P2. It's indicated the red rectangle block on the map, public road. At the top of the map is the Protea Hotel, Klein Zalze, the Teresa restaurant and the Techno Park area. On the left side of the map are surroundings, including Speed Farm, and at the bottom of the map is the airfield and municipal. Thorburn Security, hereinafter referred to as Thorburn, contracted by the estate, will man the entrance gate as well as the guards who patrol the estate. Thorburn monitored all the electric fence alarms, beams, and the camera surveillance. This was done. Security manager confirmed that the estate had and still has more than one phase of security. Thermal cameras were installed during Mr. Peterson's tenure that could pick up or spot something or somebody 20 meters from the fence. A further phase were the security guards who did patrols. The security guards served as foot soldiers. Visible patrolling by driving around was also an important deterrent. Mr. Peterson testified that if a camera did not spot a person, the alarm would alert the security personnel of the person's presence. When and if an alarm was activated by an object or person touching the electric fence, the remote monitoring room in Parow would, upon seeing that an alarm had been activated, send out the shift manager or first responder to that specific area. It is common cause that the Van Breda family residence at 12 Gosker Street is situated more or less in the middle of the estate, in a fairly built-up part of the area, near the end of a cul-de-sac, and it is the second last house in the cul-de-sac. The court conducted an inspection in loco and recorded its findings with regard to the general layout of the estate and the house. Extensive evidence was presented with regard to the security of the estate and access to it. The night of the murders, was there a possible breach of security during the night of 27 January 2015? I'll deal first with the visitors and access control gates. No unknown visitors went through the access control main gate during the night of 27 January 2015. Nobody signed in at the main gate from 23 hours 57 until 07:05 the following morning. That's according to the report Exhibit Y, handed in actually by Defence Counsel. Ms. Rousseau verified the report with regard to access cards and the times persons went in and out of the estate. CCTV footage of unlocked comings and goings at the Klein Zalze gate the morning of 27 January 2015 was presented by Defence Counsel. That's Mr. Botha, assisted by Mr. Mathieu. A restaurant and a lodge are located at Klein Zalze Estate at zone 39 and 40, which is situated quite some distance from the residential area of the Zalze, as can be seen on the map, Exhibit V1 and W. Ms. Rousseau conceded that a proper record had not been kept at the Klein Zalze gate. Neither the security guards, the neighbours, Ms. Optwerf or Ms. Talliard, nor the accused testified about the presence of a suspect motor vehicle in the residential area of the Zalze estate. The Klein Zalze gate is situated quite far from 12 Gosker Street, and there are more suitable places for a respective perpetrator to gain access to the estate. Furthermore, Sergeant Apollos testified that all the vehicles entering the estate had been accounted for, although statements of all the drivers had not been taken. The integrity of the perimeter itself, during the night of 27 January 2015, between 1800 hours and 07 the next morning, Mr. Lorenzo Africa did 5 patrol checks and found that everything was in order. He also did 3 bloodhound inspections, the last one at 02 hours 50 on 27 January 2015. In the course of the night, no alarms were activated and no trespassers, intruders were found or reported on their estate. If any such event had taken place, the monitor would have been activated and he would have responded. Therefore, on the face of it, there was no security breach the night of the murders. Mr. Africa checked the entire barrier fence for holes the night of the murders. On 27 January, Mr. Edgar Weingaard reported for duty at approximately 1800 hours as his shift started officially at 1900 hours. His shift entered 700 hours the next morning. Mr. Weingaard testified that nothing unusual was reported or spotted that particular night, neither on the camera footage afterwards. Nor on the camera footage afterwards. Nobody complained about strangers or any other undue occurrence. Mr. Weingaard testified that he did not notice any holes that night. There was also no report that Mr. Africa picked up anything at or near the fence. Mr. Weingaard testified that they patrolled the area approximately 6 to 7 times along the road close to the Van Breda residence. He did 2 so-called bloodhound patrols himself every night, but could not remember whether he assisted Mr. Africa with his patrols of the outside perimeter of the estate that particular night. He testified that the last bloodhound patrol ended at 02:50. I'll deal now with the functionality of the integrity of the fence. On 27 January 2015, when Mr. Weingaard reported again for night duty, he found nothing wrong with the fence. On 27 January, he went through all the video security footage and inspected the fence and gates physically. Mr. Weingaard testified that it was impossible for any intruder to have gained access to the estate with the night of the incident. Both Mr. Africa and Mr. Weingaard were confronted with an alleged alarm that went off at Zone 39 at 1:37 on Tuesday, 27 January 2015, and a patrol that was conducted in that area at 01:41. See paragraph 5.5, paragraph 3 of Exhibit Y. They denied responding to an alarm and the possibility that an alarm was activated at 01:37 as suggested by Defence Counsel. There seems to be a discrepancy as to which one of the security personnel did the patrol at 01:41. The court is decided that the patrol was done as a result of a response to alarm. The controller, Mr. Calvin Vergotine, from Thorburn Estate Security, can be seen at his console on photographs 37 on page 3, Exhibit Y. According to the report handed in by the defence, the controller would have heard the audible alarm and seen the zone flashing in red. Ms. Rousseau confirmed that there would be a loud sound and pop-up screen on the monitor when an alarm is activated. It would cause an irritating sound meant to alert the controller. In the case of the so-called not true alarms, there would be no signs or lights, and the activation would go straight to the history of the computer. The alarm activated at 01:37 was described as a not true alarm. It was the normal activation alarm, and it went automatically into the history system report of the system. Mr. Rousseau testified that in case of not true alarms, a responder was not sent out to check, and Ms. Rousseau testified that the system was not available on the internet for anybody to learn the workings of the system. It was a so-called standalone system. The murders were probably committed between 04 and 04:24 on 27 January 2015. if it was a true alarm, a possible intruder would have wandered around the estate or hid on the estate for a few hours before committing the crimes later in the morning. No other crimes were committed at the Zalze estate during that night or were reported. If a possible intruder entered the estate at zone 39 or 40, he or they would have gone past a number of other houses before getting to Gosker Street. Such a person also had to leave the estate again, and no other alarms were registered after 0336 and before 0853 on 27 January. The last mentioned alarm was not reported as a suspicious alarm, and is probably a deliberate alarm to test the functioning of the fence or for another ordinary purpose. Immediately after Ms. Rousseau learned about the incident on 27 January 2015, she gave instruction for the perimeter fence to be inspected centimetre by centimetre in order to establish that there was no sign of entry to the estate. After the incident, Ms. Rousseau watched the video footage herself, and apart from the fence being inspected, nothing unusual or suspect was noted or reported. She requested the remote monitoring system to check the activation of the alarms and the cameras and furnish her with reports. On a question during cross-examination where it was possible for an intruder to dig a hole under the fence and enter the estate through the hole, Ms. Rousseau responded that there were no signs of footprints alongside the fence the morning after the murders. Defence counsel pointed out that the residents were active and could be seen running alongside the fence on CCTV footage on 27 January 2015 at 05:47. Ms. Rousseau responded that one could distinguish between footprints right next to the fence and footprints some distance away where the residents were active. During cross-examination, the accused agreed that it was a fair assessment to make that possible intruders had to go to a great deal of trouble to get into the estate surrounded by an electrified fence. He conceded that the intruders had to move from the perimeter fence undetected to their house in the central area of the estate. The intruders managed to find the Van Breda house with an open back door, took nothing inside the house. Nobody heard them fleeing from the house, and they managed to exit the estate by going over or under the fence without the alarm being triggered. The accused could not say how the security was breached. He testified that there was a possibility that someone might have had access to a residence card and so gained access to the estate to commit these crimes. With that scenario, the card must have been consciously given to the intruder or stolen for that purpose. He then conceded, as accused then conceded, that the story with the card seems an unlikely scenario because his family had no real enemies. The neighbors of the Van Breda family, Ms. Stephanie Opthoff and Ms. Annelies Talliard, testified that the estate was a safe and secure environment to stay in. Ms. Opthoff was of the opinion that the Zalze estate was probably the safest and most secure place in Stellenbosch, and testified that she felt very safe living there. Ms. Talliard testified that she felt comfortable and secure living in the Zalze estate. She felt so safe that she left the children at home when she went swimming in the mornings. None of them reported any suspicious person or incidents in the vicinity of Gosker Street the night of the murders. The only unusual events were the loud male voices coming from the Van Breda home. The accused confirmed that he never felt insecure, unsafe or threatened by living in the estate. They slept with open windows, without burglar bars, and keys in the doors without security gates. The back door was even left open or unlocked sometimes. It was submitted by the State Council, that's Ms. Galloway, assisted by Ms. Rose, that the security measures of the estate, the location of the property on the estate, and the close proximity of the house made it highly improbable for any intruders to access the estate and the property in question, commit these crimes, and exit the property and estate without being detected. Despite lengthy cross-examination, the defendant was unable to suggest or present evidence of a real breach of the security. Considering the probabilities, and in the light of what I've already said, the court is in agreement, this was with Galloway, that it is highly unlikely that the security was breached by an intruder from outside the Zalze estate. The emergency call and the demeanor of the accused. In the early hours of 27 January 2015, Janine Philander, employed as an operator by the City of Cape Town at the Emergency Communication Centre, received a call from the accused. The audio recording of the call, Exhibit JJ, was played in court. The recording started at 07:12 and ended at 07:37. What is striking is the emergency call lasted 25 minutes. The accused appeared emotional while the audio recording was played in court. The accused confirmed that the sound clips of the emergency call were correct and the contents of it were what happened. The accused testified that he had a speech impediment and stuttered. He received speech therapy from grade 4 until grade 10. The accused said that he panicked, was breathing very fast, and lit a cigarette at the kitchen counter to calm himself down while the emergency call was dialing. He smoked 3 cigarettes in short succession, dropping them onto the floor where they burnt out. He said the reason for that was that the cigarettes just fell out of his hand. In circumstances, it was not acceptable for them to smoke in the house. The accused was taught the technique to speak slowly and calmly, because as soon as he started speaking fast, he would get stuck. When listening to the audio recording, it was quite clear to the court that the accused in fact stuttered slightly. Ms. Philander conceded that towards the end of the call, and not make use of other obvious options